Okay, so this is a good well to show. A lady called out of water, and her pump was out here. It was getting real hot. So when I get here, she hadn't turned the power off, and it was still hot. And what she told me, she had a flow well. You can see the valve in the back and the actual well, 2-inch well casing right there. And then the tank, it's an old galvanized tank, and the air volume control's leaking. The next thing we noticed is the tank's waterlogged. It's solid, completely full of water. So that was the first sign that something had went wrong here. I got the switch turned off just by putting the screwdriver through it, but you can see those points there. They're nicely burned up, and so this is what it does. So it just hums. Now that's a sign that the waterlogged tank has damaged the motor. More than likely it's a capacitor or a start switch. The pressure switch is still working, but it's burned up and it needs to be replaced in order to get everything straightened out. So here's the back of the motor with the cover taken off. There's just 2 screws on either side. You can take the cover off. Make sure the power is off before you take it off. I have the power disconnected here, so there's no power traveling inside the motor. This is the start switch. It's nice and black. And then the first thing you can check before you go to changing a capacitor or something is to take a screwdriver and just depress that a couple times, get the points to rubbing together, and that should make it work. And then try it again. Here's your capacitor for the. This is a 1/2 horsepower Berkeley, which is basically a copy of a 1/2 horsepower Stay Right shallow well pump. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and change that capacitor because it's still humming. So that tells me more than likely the capacitor's bad. Another thing you can do is if you can get you a little light and shine up in here and look at the actual windings, you should be able to see the windings of the motor. If they're black, it's very hard to tell because there's not much room to look around it, but you can look up in here and there should be 2 separate windings. Your running windings, which is going to be a bigger set of wires, and the start windings, which is a smaller set coil of wires. And that is the one that if it's burnt and looks black or brownish or sooted up and not either painted still or coppery or aluminum colored, the motor's burned up. So nothing you do here will fix the problem. Okay, so I'm gonna take this capacitor off. Got Matt holding it there, pretty steady. So we just loosen this screw here, rotate to the side, and then you're gonna have 3 wires to disconnect usually. And these are the motor leads and a start winding lead. So there's a capacitor. Here's a new one. That was a 161 193 for the 1/2 horse motor. And what you do is you want to connect the single color to one side and the other color to the opposite side. So the light colors you want to go together. And then just rotate that up in there. Make sure your wires are not in between the motor. And they go back in between the little cradle right there. And then put the cover back, the clamp, tighten that up. Okay. Now just to test it out, you don't want to leave it open in case it goes off like a shotgun. Just go ahead and put the cover back on temporarily and give it a try. Sounds like it's working. Now in a pinch you could do this if you could get a hold of a capacitor, but I definitely would recommend, in this case, when it's waterlogged that bad and the points are burned up and your start switch is burned up, they're next. So just go ahead and change them out also. This is a standard stay right start switch. And of course your standard square D pressure switch. Alright, the next thing we'd want to do here is actually start draining the tank. Do that. There's a faucet back here. I can't hardly see it. There it is. Got the valve off to the house. Now, being that this is a flow well, I'm getting water here, so we want to turn the flow well off, and then that's going to diminish down. And then we need, in order to drain the tank, you know, it's like if you're holding your finger over the end of a straw. So in order to do that, you want to, say like this air vine control, you want to take it off. And then that water will drain down. So that few seconds I had the pump on, it built up a little bit of pressure in the tank. So we'll go ahead and let that drain down. And I'm going to change the pressure switch and the start switch and show when I'm done. Alright, so take this out.
Ain't doing nothing.
So you just drain the tank down. And you can see how waterlogged it was. Don't want to get the switch wet, huh? Water and electricity doesn't mix, right? Yeah, being a flow well, having an air vine control on it, that's just a bad idea. They're nearly impossible to get to work, just due to the nature of the device. These are probably your best bet because it doesn't require much vacuum to draw down. But they're getting to where these don't work anymore because they crack within a couple of weeks, or they start leaking like this one did. So basically, on any flow well or very high water table situation, it's really not necessary to have a air vine control. You're going to want to install a air release in the tank. We're going to tighten that up, and then putting a not a regular tire valve, but a snifter valve. It's a very, very weak spring in the place of where the suction tubing went for the air vine control. And because it's a flow well, this pump will never lose prime, but it will continue to suck air here for a little bit. As soon as the pump comes on, put air in the tank. When the air reaches about halfway, the air release is starting letting out the excess. And usually with flow wells, this is a very good thing to do because of the hydrogen sulfide gas. This is going to help relieve that stinky water. It's just all around just a better deal, and it's a lot easier to manage. Alright, so I'm going to show how to take this start switch off. There's a little 1/4 inch nut driver. I'm going to take this loose here. Then you want to have your pair of needle nose. Pull these connections off. Get your new one. You want to put them back where they were. This one slips through right here, so it doesn't pinch the connection. And then there's a little tab, a little metal tab that fits in here, and this set screws in there. make sure you get it lined up good. Tighten it on back down. And you can test it out, but make sure your thing turns, and then you can lift that clutch up. That should disconnect the points. You don't want to lift up here, because if you stretch that spring, it may not make contact. But right there is releasing the contact. Alright, next we want to take this pressure switch loose. Start by taking the motor leads off. Pull those out. We've got one ground wire, because the motor is actually bonded to the metal switch to get its ground. Just throw the screws away. You need those. And somebody wrap the wires around the connectors, making little hooks. That's not really necessary. All you need is a little 1/2 inch of wire to make a connection. You will need to wrap it around these screws though when you grounds. And take that little lock ring off. This plastic one's going to be a pain in the butt. Try to get them going. Just pull that out. Get out the way. I'm going to take a flathead and maybe something to tap on. Got to break that connection on the motor side. And you can take that ring off. Set it to the side. Now on these factory pumps, you should have a little compression connector, and the way you do these is you push in the tube and you pull on that little connector there, and then you can pull the tube out. So you want to push down on that and pull the tube out, and reuse it because it just plugs right back in. I'm just going to take a pair of channel locks and untwist it out of there. Put some tape on here. I got a new switch. Alright. Then we can just reverse the process, put it all back together. Our nose through there. This tube, just plug it in. Alright. Water's still draining out of the tank, if you hear that in the background. Alright, now tighten this back up. I'm gonna have to adjust it a little. Actually, what works better is, before tightening this up, make sure this is tight. And the motor. Otherwise, it's just going to spin on you. Can you see this right here? Good, man? That's where I'm making a connection. Lock that ring on there. Alright. Now that's tight. Take this other one, slide it back through. Slip that ring over. And those don't have to be super tight. It's like a Chinese finger trap trying to get it on there. I'm going to take ground wire. Hook it back up. Now you want your power coming in to be on the outside of the switch, which is your line, and your load, which is to the motor, on the inside of the switch. Which is good to keep consistent. It wouldn't matter if you did that at the opposite or what have you. Just so long as you don't put the motor on one side and the power on the other. You'd find out real quick that you're going to trip a breaker. Alright. Yeah, this motor had gotten so hot. Check this out. I cut the pipe out of the way. Look how loose that was. I mean, it didn't completely disfigure or warp, but it was hot enough that it was leaking. I'm gonna check that suction line too. More than likely it's... Oh yeah, look at the pump. It's loose too. Got some gluing to do. Alright, so we got it all re-glued here. Suction and discharge to the tank. Those male adapters were loose. Open the well back up. Get the water to flow in here. Prime the pump. And turn the pump on. Turn this off. Oh man, look at that funky water coming out of there. I would say the well was pretty stirred up. Definitely going to have some running to do. Now, the way this the way the snifter valve works is right now this pump's running. Alright, there we go. I actually had to throttle the flow rate a little bit. There it goes. So it's catching just a little bit of air. A little peak of air. And that's all it needs to keep this tank charged with air. And eventually it'll get down and let the excess out. Alright, so here's the cycle time on this half horsepower shallow well pump on a flow well with a 40-gallon standard tank. I have the pressure set 35, 60. So when it comes on, it'll draw a little bit of air. Alright, got it coming on there. nice little cycle time. A little bit over 30 seconds. That's always good. Alright, let the lady have water to the house. So you can just run it out until it clears up. That's it.